The red lights on Ambassador Jake Morrison's desk started flashing at 3 in the morning. He rolled out of bed in his quarters on the Terran Embassy station and stumbled to his computer. The incoming message was marked with the highest priority. Codes from the Zephyrian Council. Jake rubbed his eyes and opened the transmission. A tall, thin alien with blue skin and large eyes appeared on his screen. The creature's face looked tired and scared. "Greetings, Ambassador Morrison. I am Veltar of the Zephyrian Council. I send this message in our darkest hour." The alien's voice was soft and musical, but Jake could hear the fear in it. "We need your help." Jake sat up straighter. The Zephyrian Council was a group of 7 alien species that lived peacefully together. They had been trading with humans for 5 years, but they had never asked for help before. Veltar continued speaking. "A machine race called the Void Seekers has attacked our worlds. They destroy everything in their path. They take our resources and leave nothing behind. 17 worlds have fallen in the past 6 months. Our people are dying." The alien paused and looked directly at the camera. "We have heard stories about human military power, but we do not ask for war. We ask for aid. We need medical supplies for our wounded. We need ships to carry our people to safety. Perhaps a small fleet to protect our escape routes." Veltar's image flickered slightly. "We know humans are reasonable people, like us. We hope you will send what help you can. Our council meets in 3 days to decide whether to surrender to the machines or flee to the outer systems. Please respond soon." The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He had dealt with many alien requests before, but this was different. This was a cry for help from an entire civilization. Jake immediately called Admiral Lisa Kane, head of the Terran Defense Force. Her face appeared on his screen 5 minutes later. She looked wide awake despite the early hour. "Admiral, we have a situation," Jake said. He played Veltar's message for her. Admiral Kane watched the transmission without speaking. Her face grew darker as Veltar described the Void Seekers. When the message ended, she was quiet for a long moment. "What do you know about these machines?" she asked. Jake pulled up his files. "Not much. Our intelligence reports say they showed up about a year ago. They attack without warning and never negotiate. They seem to want resources, not territory. They strip planets bare and move on. How many species have they hit?" 17 that we know of. All of them tried to fight defensively or negotiate. None of it worked. Admiral Kane leaned back in her chair. "Jake, I want you to hold off on your response. I need to make some calls first." "Admiral, they're asking for humanitarian aid, not military support. This should be simple." "Nothing about this is simple," Admiral Kane said. "Give me 6 hours." The call ended, leaving Jake confused. He had expected the Admiral to approve a standard aid package immediately. Instead, she seemed to be planning something bigger. 6 hours later, Jake's door chimed. Admiral Kane walked in with Captain Ryan Brooks, her chief tactical advisor. "Captain." Brooks carried a thick folder of papers. "Admiral, I've prepared the aid response," Jake said. 3 hospital ships, 2 refugee transports, and a small escort of 6 destroyers. We can have them ready in a week." Admiral Kane shook her head. "We're not sending aid ships, Jake." "What do you mean?" "They specifically asked for humanitarian assistance." Captain Brooks opened his folder. "Ambassador, we've been studying the Void Seekers all morning. These machines have destroyed 17 civilizations in 1 year. They're not going to stop with the Zephyrians. Our analysis shows a clear pattern," Admiral Kane added. "The Seekers move in a straight line through space. If they finish with Zephyrian territory, the next logical target is human space." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You think they'll attack us?" "Not think." "No," Captain Brooks said. "It's just a matter of time. We can deal with them now, while they're busy with the Zephyrians, or we can wait for them to finish their current conquest and come for us." Admiral Kane stood up and walked to the window overlooking the Mars shipyards. Hundreds of military vessels floated in the red planet's orbit. "Jake, the Zephyrians asked for help. They're going to get it, just not the kind they expected." "What are you planning?" "We're going to solve their Void Seeker problem. Permanently." Jake stared at her. Admiral, they asked for medical supplies and refugee ships. They don't want a war. They don't get a choice, Admiral Kane said firmly. This threat ends now before it spreads. She turned back to Jake. I want you to send a response to Veltar. Tell him help is coming. Tell him to prepare coordinates for fleet arrival. What kind of fleet? Captain Brooks smiled grimly. The kind that makes problems go away forever. Jake looked between the two military officers. How big a fleet are we talking about? All of it, Admiral Kane said simply. All of what? All of it, Jake. Every ship we have, every Marine, every pilot. We're mobilizing the entire Terran Defense Force. Jake's mouth fell open. That's over 800 ships. 837, to be exact, Captain Brooks said. Plus support vessels, troop transports, and manufacturing ships. The Zephyrians will panic when they see that many warships. Admiral Kane shrugged. They asked for help. This is how humans help. She walked toward the door, then paused. Jake, when you send that message, make sure they understand one thing. We're not coming to rescue them. We're coming to eliminate the threat. There's a difference. After the Admiral and Captain left, Jake sat alone in his office for an hour. He stared at the communication panel, trying to find the right words. How do you tell peaceful aliens that help is coming in the form of the largest military force in human history? Finally, he activated the recorder and looked into the camera. Representative Veltar, this is Ambassador Morrison. Your message has been received and reviewed at the highest levels of human government. He paused, then continued. Help is coming. Prepare coordinates for fleet arrival. Be advised that human assistance may exceed your expectations. Please stand by for further instructions. Jake ended the recording and sent it immediately before he could change his mind. Then he called his staff and told them to prepare for the biggest diplomatic crisis in human history. Somewhere in Zephyrian space, Veltar would receive that message and assume humans were sending a modest support fleet. He had no idea that humanity's definition of help was about to change the galaxy forever. 3 weeks later, space around Mars looked like a metal storm. Ships of every size filled the orbit around the red planet. The largest vessels were 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and armor. Smaller ships darted between them like insects around giants. Admiral Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, the biggest warship humanity had ever built. Through the massive window, she watched the final ships arrive. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers, and support vessels stretched as far as she could see. Final count, Admiral, Captain Ryan Brooks reported from his station. 837 combat vessels, 212 support ships, and 150 troop transports. And personnel? 2,400,000 military personnel. That includes Marines, pilots, engineers, and support staff. Admiral Kane nodded. In her 30 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. The entire human military was moving as one giant force. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian Council. The communications officer announced. Put it through. Veltar appeared on the main screen. The alien looked confused and worried. Admiral Kane, our sensors are detecting an unusually large number of ships in your system. Are you planning a major military exercise? Admiral Kane smiled. Something like that, Representative. How are your preparations going? We have prepared coordinates for your aid fleet as requested. We assume you are sending perhaps 20 or 30 ships. Our fleet will be larger than expected. Please ensure your people are ready to receive us. Veltar's large eyes blinked. Slowly. How much larger? You'll see when we arrive. Kane out. The transmission ended. Captain Brooks chuckled quietly. I almost feel sorry for them. Don't, Admiral Kane said. They're about to get exactly what they asked for. Help. On the other side of the fleet, Colonel Pete Williams walked through the main hangar of the troop, transport ship Liberty. Around him, 10,000 Marines checked their equipment and weapons. The sound of metal on metal filled the air as soldiers loaded ammunition and tested armor systems. Listen up, Colonel Williams shouted. His voice echoed through the hangar. In 6 hours, we jump to Zephyrian space. Our mission is simple: eliminate the Void Seeker threat. A young Marine raised her hand. Sir, what about the alien civilians? Protect them by destroying the machines trying to kill them, Williams replied. The aliens have been fighting defensively for months. That stops now. We take the fight to the enemy. Sergeant Amy Chen, a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, stood near the front of the group. Colonel, what are we expecting from these void seekers? Machines. Fast, smart, and heavily armed. They've beaten 17 species already, so don't underestimate them. Colonel Williams paused. But remember, those 17 species weren't humans. Those machines have never fought anyone from a death world before. The Marines began to grin. They had all heard the stories about how other aliens saw Earth, a planet so dangerous that most species considered it impossible to live on. Humans were the only known race crazy enough to evolve on a world full of predators, diseases, and natural disasters. Sir, another Marine called out, what about prisoners? Machines don't surrender, Williams said, and we don't negotiate with threats to human space. In the engineering section of the Retribution, Chief Engineer Ben Torres supervised the loading of the fleet's supplies. But these weren't normal supplies. Massive fabrication units were being installed on every ship, mobile factories that could turn raw materials into weapons, ammunition, and equipment. Chief, why are we bringing so much manufacturing equipment? Asked Lieutenant Karen Foster, the new engineering officer. Because we don't know how long this will take, Torres explained. The brass wants to make sure we can build whatever we need wherever we are. But surely we're bringing enough ammunition already, Torres laughed. Kid, there's no such thing as enough ammunition when humans go to war. We always plan to use more than we think we need. Lieutenant Foster looked confused, but the Zephyrians only asked for a small escort fleet. The Zephyrians don't understand humans yet, Torres said. When we solve a problem, we make sure it stays solved. On the bridge of the carrier ship Enterprise, Captain Tony Adams watched his pilots prepare their fighters. 300 small attack craft were being fueled and armed. Each pilot was checking their ship's weapons systems and flight computers. Captain, his wing commander reported, all squadrons ready for launch. The pilots are asking about engagement rules. Standard human doctrine, Adams replied. Overwhelming force applied immediately. No warning shots, no negotiations. The enemy gets one chance to retreat. If they don't take it, we destroy them. Commander Steve Johnson, leader of the first fighter squadron, approached the captain. Sir, the aliens we're helping might be shocked by our tactics. That's their problem, Adams said. We didn't ask them to start this war, but we're going to finish it. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Martinez worked in her laboratory aboard the science vessel Discovery. She was studying everything known about the Void Seekers. The information was limited, but what she found was troubling. These machines are efficient, she told her research team. They attack quickly, take what they need, and move on. They've never faced organized resistance. What about their technology? Asked Dr. Patricia Stone, her assistant. Advanced, but not impossible. They rely on speed and surprise. They hit planets before the defenders can organize. What happens when they meet a force that's already organized? Dr. Martinez looked at the data again. Nobody knows. We're about to find out. In the communications center, Commander Rachel Stone was monitoring alien news broadcasts. The reports were disturbing. 3 more Zephyrian worlds had fallen to the Void Seekers in the past week. Admiral, she reported to Kane over the intercom, the situation is getting worse. The Seekers are accelerating their attacks. Understood. How long? Until our fleet is ready to jump? Final ships are loading now. We can leave in 4 hours. Make it 3 hours, Admiral Kane ordered. Every day we wait, more aliens die. As the final preparations continued, word of the human fleet began to spread through alien space. Ships from other species detected the massive force gathering at Mars. Soon, nervous communications were flying between alien governments. The Altarian Trade Federation sent a formal inquiry asking if humans were planning to invade someone. The Crystalline Republic offered to mediate whatever conflict was brewing. The Gentle Collective begged humans to reconsider whatever they were planning. Admiral Kane ignored them all. She had one mission: eliminate the Void Seeker threat before it could spread to human space. Admiral, Captain Brooks reported. "We're receiving panicked transmissions from multiple alien governments. They're scared of our fleet." "Good," Kane replied. "Fear means respect, and respect keeps the peace. What about the Zephyrians? They're starting to ask very specific questions about our fleet size." Admiral Kane looked out at her massive armada, nearly 1,200 ships, ready for war. "Tell them the truth, Captain. Help is coming." "All of it, ma'am?" "All of it." The jump to Zephyrian space was scheduled for 800 hours. When that moment came, the largest military force in human history would disappear from Mars' orbit and reappear in alien space. The Zephyrians were expecting a modest aid convoy. They were about to discover what happened when humans decided to solve a problem permanently. The space around Zephyr Prime had never seen anything like it. One moment the system was quiet except for the small alien defense fleet. The next moment, the sky filled with human warships. Veltar stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Peacekeeper, staring at his sensors in complete shock. The readings had to be wrong. No fleet could be that large. "How many ships?" he asked his sensor operator. "I count over 1,000 vessels, sir. The computer cannot identify most of them. They are larger than anything in our databases." Veltar's hands shook as he opened a communication channel. "Human fleet, this is Representative Veltar of the Zephyrian Council. We welcome your aid, but there seems to be some mistake. Your fleet is much larger than we expected." Admiral Kane's voice came through the speakers, calm and confident. "No mistake, Representative. You asked for help. This is how humans help. But we only requested a small escort force. Plans change. Prepare to receive our diplomatic team. We need to discuss strategy." Veltar looked around his bridge at his confused officers. His own fleet consisted of 47 small ships designed for exploration and light patrol work. The human escort vessels alone outnumbered his entire force by 10 to 1, and those were just the smallest human ships. 2 hours later, Veltar found himself in the main conference room of his ship, facing the most frightening group of beings he had ever seen. The human delegation had arrived in a shuttle that was bigger than some of his warships. Captain Tony Adams led the human team. He was shorter than Veltar but twice as wide, with muscles that strained against his uniform. Behind him stood Lieutenant Karen Foster, a small human female who somehow looked even more dangerous than the captain. "Representative Veltar, Captain," Adams said, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight. "We need to understand your situation better." Veltar gestured to a holographic map that appeared above the table. "The Void Seekers have taken these 17 systems. Our defense strategy has been to evacuate civilian populations and establish fortified positions here, here, and here." Lieutenant Foster studied the map for a moment, then looked at Veltar with an expression he couldn't read. "You're running away." "We are conducting a strategic withdrawal to defensible positions," Veltar explained. "No," Foster said firmly. "You're running away." Captain Adams leaned forward. "Representative, where are the Void Seekers now?" "Our scouts report a large force massing here." Veltar pointed to a system 3 jumps away. "We estimate they will attack our next defensive line in 5 days." "How large is this force?" "Perhaps 200 vessels." Captain Adams and Lieutenant Foster exchanged a look that made Veltar nervous. "Representative," Adams said slowly, "your entire strategy is based on defense and retreat?" "It is the traditional way of warfare among civilized species," Veltar replied. "We minimize casualties and protect our populations." "How's that working out for you?" Foster asked. Veltar's blue skin darkened with embarrassment. "Not well. We have lost 17 worlds and millions of lives." Captain Adams stood up and walked to the map. "Here's what's going to happen. We're not waiting for the Seekers to attack your positions. We're going to attack them." "Attack?" Veltar's voice rose in pitch. "But that could provoke them into greater violence." "Representative," Foster said, "they're already committing the greatest violence possible. They're destroying entire civilizations. But surely we can negotiate with them." Both humans stared at Veltar like he had said something insane. "You can't negotiate with cancer," Adams said. "You cut it out." The meeting was interrupted by an alarm from the bridge. Feltar's communication officer appeared on the screen looking terrified. "Sir, our forward scouts are reporting Void Seeker advance units at the edge of the system." Veltar immediately stood up. "All ships, prepare for emergency evacuation. Begin withdrawal to rally point 7. "Belay that order," Captain Adams said calmly into his own communicator. "Who are you talking to?" Veltar asked. "Admiral Kane." "Admiral, we have Seeker scouts in system, requesting permission to engage." Admiral Kane's voice came through clearly. "Permission granted. Show them what they're dealing with." Before Veltar could object, his sensors lit up with new contacts. Human fighter squadrons were launching from the massive carrier ships. Hundreds of small attack craft streaked toward the edge of the system. "Stop them," Veltar cried. "If we attack the scouts, the main fleet will know we're here." "Representative," Lieutenant Foster said quietly, "the main fleet already knows you're here. That's why they sent scouts." On the tactical display, Veltar watched the engagement unfold. The Void Seeker scouts were fast and well-armed. Their ships moved with mechanical precision, their weapons fired with deadly accuracy. For a moment, he thought the humans had made a terrible mistake. Then the human fighters reached combat range. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human pilots moved like nothing Veltar had ever seen. Their ships twisted and turned in impossible patterns, avoiding enemy fire while returning devastating attacks. The Void Seeker scouts, built for efficiency and logic, could not adapt to the chaotic creativity of human tactics. Commander Steve Johnson's voice came through the communication system. "Tango Squadron to Admiral Kane. All enemy scouts destroyed. No human casualties, requesting permission to pursue fleeing contacts." "Negative, Commander. Return to formation." Veltar stared at the tactical display. The engagement had lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes to destroy scouts that had terrorized his people for months. "How?" he whispered. Captain Adams sat back down. "Representative, may I ask you something?" Veltar nodded, still staring at the display. "What kind of world do your people come from?" "Zephyr is a peaceful world. Beautiful gardens, calm seas, gentle weather. It is paradise." "No predators?" "We have some small animals, but nothing dangerous." "No natural disasters?" "Our world is very stable. We rarely have storms or earthquakes." Lieutenant Foster smiled, but it wasn't a comforting expression. "Captain, should we tell him?" "Tell me what?" Veltar asked. Captain Adams looked directly at him. "Representative, humans come from what we call a death world. Everything on our planet tries to kill us. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even the plants. We evolved by fighting for survival every single day." "We're not just soldiers," Foster added. "We're survivors. And survivors don't retreat from threats. They eliminate them." Veltar looked around the room at his own officers. They were tall, elegant, graceful beings who had never known real conflict. The humans were shorter, broader, scarred, and carried themselves like coiled springs ready to explode into violence. "What do you intend to do?" Veltar asked quietly. "We're going to find the main Void Seeker fleet," Adams said, "and we're going to destroy it. All of it. But there are thousands of them, and there are thousands of us," Foster replied. "The difference is we know how to use our numbers." Admiral Kane's voice came through the communicator again. "Captain Adams, prep the representative for what's coming. The main Seeker fleet just jumped into the system." Veltar felt his blood turn cold. "How many ships?" "Sensors show 800. Vessels," his officer reported from the bridge. Captain Adams smiled grimly. "Perfect. Admiral Kane has been looking forward to a real fight." Through the viewport, Veltar could see the human fleet moving into attack formation. The massive ships moved with surprising grace, like a pack of predators surrounding their prey. "Representative," Adams said, standing up again. "You asked for help. You're about to see what that looks like when humans decide to solve your problem permanently." The Void Seekers had come expecting to find cowering prey. Instead, they had found the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. And those predators were done playing defense. The Void Seeker fleet arrived expecting easy prey. 800 machine ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their sensors scanning for the weak alien defenders they had been hunting for months. Instead, They found 1,200 human warships waiting for them. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the enemy fleet on her tactical display. The machine ships were impressive. Clean lines, advanced weapons, and they moved with the cold precision she expected from artificial intelligence. "Admiral, enemy fleet has achieved full deployment," Captain Brooks reported. "They're scanning our ships." "What do their scans tell them?" Kane asked. "Probably that we have superior numbers and firepower." Brooks smiled grimly. "I wonder if machines can feel fear." "We're about to find out. All ships attack pattern Alpha. No warnings, no negotiations. Full engagement." Kane had studied every report about the Void Seekers. They always gave their targets a chance to surrender. Before attacking, they followed rules, protocols, logical procedures. They expected their enemies to do the same. Humans didn't follow those rules. The human fleet opened fire without warning. 300 ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously, turning space into a storm of energy beams and missiles. The Seekers, caught off guard by the immediate attack, scrambled to respond. But their response followed predictable patterns. The machines formed defensive lines, calculated optimal firing solutions, and returned fire with mechanical accuracy. It was logical. It was efficient. It was exactly what Admiral Kane expected them to do. "Captain Adams, execute boarding operations," Kane ordered. "Boarding operations?" Veltar's voice came through the communication channel from his ship. "Admiral, those are enemy vessels." "That's why we're boarding them," Kane replied calmly. Captain Dan Murphy led the first wave of boarding pods toward the nearest Void Seeker ship. His Marines were packed into armored shells that would ram through enemy hulls and deliver soldiers directly into the heart of enemy vessels. "Remember your training," Murphy told his troops as their pod accelerated toward the target. "These machines think logically. We don't. Use that advantage." The boarding pod smashed through the Seeker ship's armor like a bullet through paper. Murphy and his 30 Marines poured into the enemy vessel, weapons ready. The inside of the Seeker ship was cold and dark, filled with the hum of machinery. Red lights flashed as mechanical defenders moved to intercept the human intruders. Murphy had fought in the tunnels of Mars during the rebellion. He had led assault teams through the burning streets of New Tokyo. But fighting inside an alien machine ship was a new experience. The Seeker defenders were fast and accurate. They moved with perfect coordination. Their weapons never missed their targets. But they couldn't adapt to human tactics. "Jackson, grenades down the left corridor," Murphy ordered. "Chen, flank them from the right. Rodriguez, find their computer core." The machines fought efficiently, but humans fought creatively. They used explosives in unexpected ways, took cover behind debris, and moved in patterns that no logical mind could predict. "Sector 7 secured," Sergeant Amy Chen reported as her team cleared another section of the ship. "These machines don't know how to fight in close quarters." "Because they never had to," Murphy replied, kicking down a door that led to the ship's central computer. "They always fought from a distance against civilized enemies." Chief Analyst Laura Price was monitoring the battle from the science vessel Discovery. Her job was to crack enemy communications and steal their technology. She watched data flow across her screens as human boarding teams captured Seeker vessels throughout the fleet. "Admiral," she reported to Kane, "we're successfully accessing enemy computer systems. The machines use quantum encryption, but it's not unbreakable. How long until you crack their codes? Give me 2 hours with captured equipment and I'll have their entire communication network." What the Void Seekers discovered was that humans didn't just fight wars, they consumed them. Every captured ship became a source of intelligence. Every defeated enemy became a teacher. Within hours of first contact, human engineers were studying Seeker technology and figuring out how to turn it against its creators. Major Chris Evans led ground assault teams against Seeker manufacturing facilities on the nearby moon. The machines had built factories to produce more ships and weapons. They assumed their orbital fleet would protect these installations. They were wrong. "Alpha Team, breach the main factory," Evans ordered as his dropships landed on the moon's surface. "Beta Team, secure the power plant. Charlie Team, find their command center." The Seeker ground forces were even less prepared for human tactics than their space fleet. The machines had never faced soldiers who treated impossible odds as personal challenges. Evans kicked in the door to the factory control room and found himself facing 6 armed machines. Logical thinking said he should retreat and call for backup. Instead, he drew both his sidearms and charged straight at them. The machines calculated the probability of a single human defeating 6 defenders. Their computers said it was impossible. They didn't account for the fact that humans regularly did impossible things. 3 minutes later, Evans was rewiring the factory's production systems while his engineers studied the machinery. "Colonel Lee," he called to his engineering specialist, "can we reprogram these factories?" "Colonel Sandra." Lee examined the alien equipment with professional interest. "Give me 6 hours and I'll have this facility building human weapons instead of seeker ships." "Do it." By the end of the first day, the human fleet had captured or destroyed half the Void Seeker force. But more importantly, they had turned the enemy's own infrastructure against them. The factory on the moon was now producing human ammunition. Captured seeker ships were being retrofitted with human weapons. The machine's own communication network was carrying human battle plans. "Admiral." Kane watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The seekers were still fighting, but they were losing badly. Their logical minds couldn't adapt to an enemy that broke every rule of civilized warfare. "Admiral," Dr. Helen Martinez reported from her laboratory, "we've analyzed captured seeker databanks. These machines have records of every species they've conquered. Any useful intelligence?" All 17 previous species tried to fight defensively. They built fortified positions, evacuated civilians, and hoped to outlast the seekers. None of them ever took the offensive. Which explains why the seekers weren't prepared for our tactics. Exactly. They've never faced an enemy that treated their invasion as an opportunity to capture territory and resources. The battle raged for 3 days. The Void Seekers fought with mechanical determination, but they were facing an enemy that fought with creativity and adaptability. Every seeker advantage was turned against them. Their superior coordination meant they were predictable. Their logical thinking meant they couldn't understand human chaos. Commander Steve Johnson led his fighter squadron deep into enemy formation, weaving between massive seeker ships like a dancer. His pilots followed him in patterns that no computer could predict, striking at weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. "Control, this is Johnson. We've identified their command ship, requesting permission to attack." "Permission granted," Admiral Kane replied. "Take it intact if possible. We want their central computer." Johnson smiled inside his helmet. "Roger that. You heard the Admiral, boys. Time to capture ourselves a flagship." By the end of the 4th day, the last Void Seeker ship had been destroyed or captured. The machine fleet that had terrorized 17 civilizations was gone. But the humans weren't finished. "Admiral," Captain Brooks reported, "we've extracted the location of every seeker base and facility from their computer networks." Admiral Kane studied the star map that appeared on her screen. Red dots marked seeker installations scattered across dozens of systems. How many targets? 47 major installations, hundreds of smaller outposts. Kane looked at her fleet. The battle had cost her 36 ships and 8,000 personnel. The seekers had cost her people, time, and resources. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "We need more ships." "More ships, Admiral? We're not going home until every last seeker facility is destroyed. This threat ends here, permanently." Veltar, watching from his flagship, could only stare in amazement. The humans had defeated an enemy that had conquered 17 civilizations, and now they were planning to hunt down every trace of that enemy across the galaxy. He was beginning to understand that asking humans for help meant accepting their definition of what help looked like. And humans believed that problems should stay solved forever. 6 months after the first battle, the last Void Seeker facility was nothing but floating debris. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching her engineers plant monitoring stations around the destroyed enemy base. "That's the last one," Captain Brooks reported. 47 major installations, 312 smaller outposts, and every seeker ship we could find. All destroyed. Kane nodded. The human fleet had spent half a year hunting down every trace of the machine threat. They had followed seeker signals across dozens of star systems, destroying factories, shipyards, and resource extraction facilities. Not one enemy installation had been left intact. Casualties? Kane asked. Final count. 138 ships lost, 22,000 personnel killed or wounded. Kane was quiet for a moment. 22,000 humans had died to eliminate a threat that could have eventually reached Earth. It was a fair trade, but she mourned every loss. Admiral, the communications officer announced. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. Put it through. The main screen filled with representatives from 12 different alien species. They all looked nervous. The council speaker, a tall being with gray skin, began the conversation. Admiral Kane, the Galactic Council has been monitoring your actions over the past 6 months. We are concerned about your methods. Explain. Your forces have crossed into the territory of 7 different species without permission. You have destroyed installations on planets that do not belong to you. Some council members believe your actions constitute an invasion. Admiral Kane stared at the alien representatives for a long moment. Then she started laughing. You think we invaded someone? The council speaker looked confused. Did you not? We eliminated a threat to galactic peace. The Void Seekers were expanding in all directions. If we hadn't stopped them, they would have reached your worlds eventually. But you destroyed their entire civilization. That was the point, Kane said simply. You don't leave cancer half removed. Another council member, a blue-skinned alien, with 4 arms leaned forward. Admiral, surely negotiation would have been possible. The Seekers might have been willing to discuss terms. Kane looked at Captain Brooks, who was shaking his head in disbelief. Representative, Kane said slowly, the Seekers had destroyed 17 civilizations. They never negotiated with anyone. They never showed mercy. They were a disease that needed to be cured. But to completely eliminate them seems extreme, the council speaker said. From a human perspective, it was the minimum necessary response. The transmission ended with the alien representatives looking even more nervous than before. Kane turned to Brooks with a tired expression. They still don't understand. Should we explain it to them? No. They'll figure it out eventually. On Zephyr Prime, Veltar was writing his final report to the council. He had spent 6 months traveling with the human fleet, watching them work. The experience had changed his entire understanding of what military force could accomplish. Beat. Human approach to warfare is unlike anything we have previously observed, he dictated to his recording device. They do not fight to achieve limited objectives or negotiate favorable terms. They fight to permanently eliminate threats. He paused, remembering the battle he had witnessed. When humans detect a problem, they solve it completely. They do not leave pieces for future generations to deal with. In 6 months, they transformed the Void Seeker crisis from an existential threat to galactic peace into a historical footnote. Veltar looked out his window at the new human monitoring station orbiting his planet. It was a massive facility, bristling with sensors and weapons. The humans have established permanent monitoring stations throughout our region of space. They claim these are necessary to prevent future threats from emerging. I believe they are correct. General Alex Turner commanded the human forces now stationed in former Seeker territory. His job was to make sure nothing like the Void Seekers ever appeared in this region again. Sir, his aide reported, the Crystalline Republic is requesting permission to establish a mining operation in the former Seeker sector. Denied, Turner replied immediately. They're offering to share the profits with us. Still denied. We're not interested in profits. We're interested in security. Turner walked to the command center's main display, which showed the entire region, under human protection. Green dots marked friendly installations. Blue dots showed allied species. Red areas indicated zones under constant surveillance. Captain Brooks, he called to his communications officer, send a message to all local governments. Remind them that any unusual activity in their space should be reported to us immediately. Yes, sir. What constitutes unusual activity? Anything. That looks like it might become a threat in 20 years. The alien governments were learning that human protection came with human oversight. Species that had once made their own military decisions now found themselves reporting to human commanders who thought in terms of permanent solutions. Dr. Patricia Stone worked in her laboratory on the Science Station Discovery, analyzing data collected from Seeker archives. What she found worried her. "Admiral," she reported to Kane over the communication link, "the Seeker databases contain references to other machine civilizations in unexplored space." "How many others?" "At least 3 separate groups. Possibly more." Kane was quiet for a moment. "Are they threats to galactic peace?" "Unknown. But the Seekers were apparently in contact with them before we destroyed their communication network. Then we need to find them before they find us." "Admiral, that could require exploring hundreds of star systems beyond current galactic borders. Then that's what we'll do." Captain Janet Brooks had been promoted to Galactic Defense Coordinator, a new position created to manage humanity's expanding role in galactic security. She spent her days coordinating between human forces and alien governments who were still adjusting to their new reality. "Representative Veltar," she said during their weekly meeting, "your people seem to be adapting well to the new security arrangements." Veltar nodded carefully. "We are grateful for human protection, though some of our citizens find your methods intense." "How so?" "Yesterday, your patrol ships responded to a distress call from one of our cargo vessels. The problem was a simple engine malfunction, and your pilots treated it as a potential hostile situation. They surrounded the cargo ship with 12 fighters before investigating." Captain Brooks shrugged. "Better safe than sorry. But it was obviously a mechanical problem. Obviously to you. To us, it could have been bait for an ambush. We prefer to assume the worst and be pleasantly surprised." Veltar was beginning to understand that humans saw potential threats everywhere. It was exhausting to live with their level of constant vigilance, but it was also remarkably effective. Admiral Kane called a meeting of her senior staff to discuss the future. The Void Seeker threat was eliminated, but her intelligence reports suggested new challenges ahead. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a decision to make," she began. "We can return to Earth and go back to our normal duties, or we can stay here and continue protecting this region of space." "What's the recommendation?" asked Colonel Williams. "We stay. The aliens in this region have become dependent on our protection. If we leave, the next threat that emerges will find them just as helpless as before. And if we stay, we become the permanent guardians of galactic peace. We hunt down threats before they become crises. We make sure problems like the Void Seekers never happen again." The room was quiet as everyone considered the implications. "Admiral," Dr. Martinez spoke up, "are we prepared for that responsibility?" Kane looked around the room at her officers. They were tired, scarred, and had been away from home for months. But they were also the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. "We're humans," she said simply. "We don't walk away from problems. We solve them." 6 months later, the human fleet was still growing. New ships arrived from Earth every week carrying fresh troops and supplies. The aliens had asked for help with one crisis, but they had received something much bigger: permanent protection. From a species that treated galactic security as a personal responsibility, the galaxy was learning to live with its new guardians. Some species were grateful, others were nervous. All of them were safer. And in the deep space beyond explored territory, human scout ships searched for the next threat, because Admiral Kane had been right about one thing: problems were much easier to solve before they became crises. The Zephyrians had asked for help. They got humanity instead. Most days they weren't sure if there was a difference.